Do you need some energy to get through the day without relying on coffee? I got just the thing for you. It's called Neuro, and I'm partnering up with them for today's video. Neuro has gum and mints to energize, calm, and focus when you need it. They were developed by former athletes who were training at the highest level and simply didn't want to take any mysterious supplements or energy drinks when studying, training, or even going out. Instead of something sugary and ineffective, they wanted to create clean and balanced energy that could be taken anytime and anywhere. Their energy and focus formula is specially formulated with natural caffeine, theanine, and B vitamins to sustain the mental endurance necessary to maintain your focus. Their calm and clarity formula is expertly developed with GABA, vitamin D3, and L-theanine to optimize composure and clarity of mind. Their health and vitality formula is specially infused with life-enhancing, immune-boosting vitamins to help strengthen and support your body. What makes Neuro different? Neuro's gone through dozens of formulations, process, and tests to ensure that each gum and mint they make delivers on their promise of getting you in the right state at the right time. Unlike other heat-extruded gum and mints, Neuro's products are created using cold compression technology, which maintains each ingredient's bioavailability. Neuro is a clean boost of energy without the jitters of coffee or an energy drink. With so many challenges and demands, it can be really hard to stay focused, and Neuro does a great job of keeping you calm, cool, and collected. Stress, fatigue, lack of focus can all impact decision-making abilities. Recently, I had been feeling sluggish and have been distracted with everything going on in my life. These Neuro mints, however, have allowed me to stay on task and have stayed calm, cool, collected, as well as alert, and I've been able to change my approach and focus on the task at hand. Go to my sponsor link now down below, tryneurogum.com/JKB to enjoy energy, calm, and focus whenever you need it. All right. After a painfully long time that it took to finish the edge defender position, I have finally scouted enough prospects where I feel like I can make a video, a Rams-centric video, that is going to be able to rank these prospects in the tiers. Now, before we get started, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all of that. But before we get started, be sure to realize that not everybody will be on this list. I don't have time to scout 90 guys like I used to be able to do per position, right? I can't do that. However, I did scout 30, and not all 30 are on here because guys like, in my opinion, you look at Will Anderson, he might go number 1 overall. He probably won't, but he is a top, we're talking upper echelon blue chip prospect. Not an option. So when you're looking at guys that are options, we're going to start off with tier 1, day 1 starters. So right now we have Will McDonald IV, a guy who could potentially be there for the Rams, but I'm not 100% sold. I'm not 100%, maybe 75, maybe 80, not 100 that he will be there at 36 for the Rams. In addition to that, another guy I'm really not sold on him being there, Nolan Smith. He comes at number 2 on this list and in tier 1. These guys are day 1 starters. Guys that you fill in right away. They replace Leonard Floyd tomorrow and you feel good about it. Okay. That's what these guys are. Looking at the number 3 guy here is Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State. I think when you look at what he can do, I think he will be there in the second round, and I think he's good value. The question is, would the Rams make a move like that? Would they draft him? I think he's certainly on that list. And then finally, a guy that I kind of feel like is going to go in the first round as well as Nolan Smith, Keion White. But the guy runs so well for his size. And when you think about what he's done as a former Ole Miss tight end, moving to the position of defensive end and being able to just basically become what could end up being a first round quality player, it's incredible what he's absolutely done. So those are the 4 guys that are in tier 1. Maybe one of these guys is available, but the point is, it is not a guarantee that all 4 of these guys are going to be available at pick 36. These are the top of the list that are realistic if you are a Rams fan. Looking at Will McDonald, this guy's battle tested. I think when, going through the tape, what you love to see about him is that even though he was played out of position at 239 pounds going against double teams, right guard, left guard, what have you, even though he was double teamed going against big time offensive linemen, big offensive linemen, he held his own. You didn't see him shy away from it. He didn't make a big deal about it. And we saw when he got the chance to play on the edge and had those reps, he made the most of those opportunities. He, to me, is a 100% first round talent. I had him as my number 2 edge defender in this class. Now, I understand that seems kind of weird to keep him here in tier 1 because I just said that a lot of these guys are going to get drafted. So I'm only talking about realistic options. But when you look at Will McDonald IV, there are some concerns, and I think the big concern there is that he's 239, and teams are going to look at the tape, and if you don't have some context, or if you don't care about the context, and you see how he was played at the 5 tech, sometimes even at the 3 tech, then you're going to understand very quickly why somebody like that could fall, because not everybody has time to go through that. And, they'll see the tape. And again, he held his own. That doesn't mean he was dominant because, again, he's only 239 pounds. So Will McDonald, to me, perfect fit for the Rams. If you're looking for anybody to kind of be the leader in the clubhouse, if you will, for a player, you want to be the leader in the clubhouse for Will McDonald IV. He would instantly replace Leonard Floyd. He's lengthy. He's a bendy pass rusher. He's exactly what you want in this draft. And if he's there at 36, I'll beat anybody to the podium to announce it. So we move on to Nolan Smith, who I don't think is going to be very much available at all. When you look at what Smith can do, he is incredibly athletic. This is one of the most athletic pass rushers that we've seen, period. I mean, let's be honest here. One of the most athletic, period. The thing about Nolan Smith is that I was surprised with how good of a run defender he is. He sets the edge well, and he really takes that on. He really cares about the job he does in the run game. A lot of these pass rushers coming out, they're not edge defenders, they're edge rushers. And what I mean by that is these guys are all edge defenders. That's how I look at them. But if you can't stop the run and you only pass rush, then yeah, you're an edge rusher. That's all you're going to do. That's all you're bringing to the table. And so when I look at Nolan Smith, he's somebody that instantly jumps off the page, as well as Will McDonald IV, that can help you as guys that can stop the run, set the edge, push guys to run up the middle, push guys to run into Aaron Donald. That's what you want. You want to funnel everything into Aaron Donald in the run game. Very simple, and it's not as simple as it sounds, but when you have a guy like Nolan or even Will McDonald, you can do that. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, super hard-working guy. His effort level is insane. I'm a big fan of FAU, I'll call him, or King Felix. Anudike-Uzomah is one of those guys that could go in the 3rd, could go in the 1st. He's kind of all over the place. I don't think anybody really knows where he's going to go, but when I watched the Kansas State tape, and I saw it during the regular season, this guy has a motor, and he is a very tough guy to block. So when I look at Anudike-Uzomah, I look at, the option of the Rams having a guy where, look, if Will McDonald's off the board, if Nolan Smith's off the board, and Keion White's off the board, I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah is one of the best pass rushers in this game, in this draft, so to speak. And I don't think that would be a downgrade as much as people would, call it that. I think when you look at FAU, he's more of an explosive guy that's not ultra athletic, very high, high motor, hard-working guy that can help you in the run game as well. And looking at him, he could play, he's versatile. If the Rams want to play 4-3 or 3-4, it doesn't matter. This guy can help you. He can help you as a 4-3 defensive end. He can help you as a 3-4 outside linebacker. Now, you might be saying at home the Rams play a 3-4. It's not technically a 3-4. It's more complicated than that. But yes, I guess it is a 3-4 to a degree. And so for that reason, you're probably looking at outside linebacker. But in other fronts, other formations, other sets, you can use him in different ways. And I think that's a big thing there with FAU. And then next up, Keion White. And you look at what Keion White has done, like I mentioned, transferring from Old Dominion to Georgia Tech and just going from the tight end position to being able to actually play defensive end. Now, here's the big thing with Keion White. I don't think he's going to be here, but if he is, he's not as much of a fit for the Rams as you would think. Keion White is, to me, either a 3-4 defensive end, an undersized to a degree in that, or a 4-3 defensive end. I don't think you want him as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I don't know if he necessarily makes a lot of sense as a stand-up pass rusher. He's somebody that I really do like. He's got a crazy blend of size and athleticism, and he really is going to help you in the run game, but he still needs work. His pass rush plan could be better. Again, this guy's raw, right? I mean, he went from tight end to defensive end overnight, it seems like. So it's still, he needs to be developed. And for the Rams, I still think they need more of an outside linebacker. So I wouldn't be against them trying out a guy who is this talented in Keion White, but he's not my preferred option. He's 100% a day one starter, though, if you put him in the right situation. And I think he's not really a fit for the Rams, but I'm going to keep him here in tier 1. Kicking off tier 2 is a guy that I think is flying under the radar and is one of the most underrated pass rushers and just general edge defenders in this entire class. I'm not hearing about Isaiah McGuire out of Mizzou enough. This guy is so great against the run. As a matter of fact, he makes block deconstruction look easy. And I can tell you right now, it's not. But when you look at him, he can bring a lot to the table. I think he is a future starter, maybe not necessarily a day one starter, although if you had to play him there, maybe you could. I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't bet against Isaiah McGuire, but this is a future starter in day 2. He represents the top of it. And when I look at him, I think he's just a balanced player that, yes, okay, maybe he doesn't have the most athleticism in the world, but he's very high motor. He is a good tackler. The explosiveness isn't quite there, but it's good enough. The speed rush is there. The bull rush is there. His agility is good enough. And he's like vice grips, man. When you try to run, get out of his way as a running back, you're trying to avoid him. He latches on and he's going to bring you to the ground. His pass rush plan could be better. He is going to have to work on that. But this guy reads and reacts, and I think he would be a great fit for the Rams. We talked about guys that could be there at 36. Maybe 77's a little too early and 69's a little too early for McGuire. But if you're looking at double dip on edge, I definitely think McGuire via a trade up in the 4th round, or if he falls to the 5th, I would be all over him. I think he is a 2nd round capable player, but I don't think that's where he's going to go. I think he's going to go much later, and I think the Rams will have an opportunity to strike on day 3. So that would be a huge pick for them. Sign me up for Isaiah McGuire. I want him on my football team. You talk about work ethic and just the motor and just what people talk about him as a high character guy. This is somebody that you want on your football team. Speaking of a guy people want on their football team, BJ Ojulari. He is a name that I continue to hear over and over and over again, and I think Ojulari is very talented. He's still young. He's one of the youngest pass rushers in this draft. And when I look at him, I still think he needs some refinement, but he could be an option day 2, and he definitely should be there, in the 2nd, maybe even the 3rd. He might even go in the 1st. I think he's going to be there in the 2nd. Now, personally, he's not my priority if I'm the Rams over some of the guys I mentioned if they're there. But the big thing with him is that he is somebody who has a high ceiling. He's not an ultra athletic guy, but he's a very crafty, beyond his years pass rusher. And with the run game, he needs to improve. There's a little bit of the motor runs really hot when he's rushing the passer. And in the run defensive department, it runs a little cold, right? He's not the best run defender. So when I look at somebody like BJ Ojulari, I think it does make sense to a degree when you're somewhat rebuilding. I know they call it remodeling. But if you're looking to find somebody and you're not in a hurry to win games, then yeah, I guess it makes sense to go out and get somebody who's a little raw that maybe might have a higher ceiling than some of the other guys I mentioned. But if you are looking for a guy to start right away and be somebody that can set the edge, that can stop the run, that basically replaces Leonard Floyd without a hitch, this is not your guy. And that is what I can't stress enough when I see people saying BJ Ojulari. I like him. I think he's a talented player, but if you're trying to replace Leonard Floyd, he's not the guy. If you're trying to, add somebody to the other side of somebody who's replacing Leonard Floyd, like say if they double dip and they go with a pass rusher at 36 and then he somehow makes his way to pick 69, I'd be all for that. Then you have your two starters, right? Or he plays behind Michael Hoyt for the time being. But to put all of that pressure on somebody who really just needs to improve in that aspect of stopping the run, and they need a run defender, I don't think he makes a ton of sense over some of the other guys. That's why I found him in tier 2. And he's somebody that I think a lot of people are going to want. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it really depends on what you're looking for. He fits the Rams, but he doesn't fit the Rams. He will be a 3-4 outside linebacker in all likelihood. So he does fit to a degree, but I do need to see him improve in the run game. He's still young and has a chance to be really good. Tennessee edge Byron Young has an incredible story that is honestly somewhat Kurt Warner-like. I mean, the story's still writing itself, right? This is somebody that was working at a Dollar General as an assistant manager, and he goes to his JUCO school, wants to make the team, so he tries to make the team, and then he finds out that he's pretty darn good, so he starts working hard there. One day during the COVID year when there was no games and they just practiced, somebody was filming their practice. It went viral what he was able to put on tape, and so he ended up getting all sorts of SEC teams looking at him, and he chose the first one that chose him, and that was Tennessee. Byron Young, to me, you look at hard work, overall work ethic, guys that'll just, pretty much are going to grind nonstop. The guy went from Dollar General to the Tennessee Volunteers to potentially getting drafted as early as day 2 in the NFL draft. Byron Young is somebody I'm very intrigued with. And when I was going through his tape, I saw somebody that was very agile. He's very explosive. He's got one of the quickest first steps in the draft at the position. He's going to take some time. He needs better hand usage. He needs a better pass rush plan. But when you're looking for a guy as a speed rusher, a guy that has agility and can help you in the run game, I think he makes a lot of sense for the Rams as their second pick. Not their second rounder, but maybe 69 or 77. I'm taking a look at Byron Young there, and he fits in my opinion, he fits at the 3-4 outside linebacker. Next up, we have a pass rush specialist that definitely needs to improve as a run defender. That is Derick Hall out of Auburn. I think his lack of run stop ability, if you will, is really holding him back, but he is such a good pass rusher, can win with power, can win with speed. He's got a pass rush plan. I'd like to see more hand usage, but the point is he's explosive and, he's got a good motor, rushing the passer. Because of that, he is going to get drafted likely on day 2, early day 3, I would say day 2. So he is an option for the Rams. I think when you look at, pick 77, if they haven't addressed the edge position yet, they might be in some trouble, but I think he makes sense if you're trying to double dip there. 77th, if they trade in the 4th round and he's still there, I think he makes sense. He's somebody that is going to give you a jolt of energy off the edge. He is a future starter. I don't believe he starts day 1, but he could be a nice addition to any rotation, going into the NFL. And then last but not least, for the tier 2 future starters, not guys that are starting day 1, not guys that are role players, guys that will eventually start if they reach what they can actually become. This is edge defender out of Kansas, Lonnie Phelps. He transfers from Miami of Ohio. He's somebody that gives you nonstop motor. He's somebody that's explosive. I love his agility, bull rush, speed rush, whatever you ask him to do, he can do it. And at KU, he did a nice job of defending the run, although he could definitely improve in that area. Phelps came to Kansas going to a team that really hasn't won much and helped them get to a bowl game this year. He was big for that defense. He came in right away as a transfer from Miami of Ohio, and immediately started right off the rip. This is somebody that's as tough as they come for the position. He's a true speed rusher with a relentless motor that will be able to play that 3-4 outside linebacker. So I think he's going to fall in this draft, probably further than he should. In my opinion, he's a day 2 early career starting edge defender who needs to get a little bit better as a run defender. And of course, you could add different things to his game, better hand usage, have more, of it like in his toolbox, have a better arsenal of pass rushing maneuvers. But with what Lonnie Phelps already showed you at the Senior Bowl, whether it was the Senior Bowl game where he dominated, or the Senior Bowl practices in which he dominated, or at Kansas in the Big 12 in which he dominated and had production at that level, Lonnie Phelps can help you day one. He might be a rotational guy, but he can develop into a starter that you feel good about. And he's another one of those double dip options where even if you go out and you get another guy who's, in my opinion, the best pass rusher from the Big 12 in this draft in Will McDonald IV, and you go and you get a Lonnie Phelps in the 4th or 5th round, whether it's a trade up in the 4th or, in the 5th round, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he's going to fall to day 3. I think he's a day 2 talent. And I think you have to feel very good about that. At least in my opinion, I think he's a really good player. And I mean, he showed it at KU. Next up is Brenton Cox from Florida, who has been dismissed by Georgia and Florida. That is a little bit of a red flag to a degree, although the dismissal reasons didn't really concern me. You could say what you will, and we obviously weren't in the locker room, but for the most part, it was a mutual decision when it came to Georgia. He did have a marijuana arrest record to that. And then he punched a Georgia player mid-game, which got him pretty much booted from the Florida program. I've seen much worse. I'm not trying to say sign me up for a guy with red flags, but when you look at the talent and you look at the ability Brenton Cox showed throughout his college career, yes, it's upsetting. You'd love to see him not get into this issue off the field. You'd like to see it just subside and, he's able to finish out his career either with Georgia or with Florida. But that's not what happened. And we've seen other guys who, we saw a guy who literally punched a girl in the face get drafted in the NFL draft. He is a starting running back to this day. So here's my thing. It could be way worse than what marijuana and maybe just a little bit of a hard guy to coach, right? But the talent is there, in my opinion, with Brenton Cox. I know people are going to think of Ja'Kai Polite and look at what Ja'Kai Polite did. But in my opinion, I think he's his own player. I don't think you should be scouting him because he has the same helmet as Ja'Kai Polite. He's got heavy hands. He plays with a nonstop motor, which is something that you just don't see with guys that are red flag. Normally, even on the field, it's a questionable motor thing. He's got the motor. He's willing to work hard. He might not get along with some of the guys at the college level, but who knows? Maybe it was that situation. Maybe when he goes to the NFL, he catches on. He's in a locker room that believes in him. He's around coaches that believe in him, try to get the most out of him. So, again, I'm not as worried as other people are about his red flags. Not saying they don't matter, but we've seen a lot worse. And those guys have made, their presence known in the NFL. His technique's going to need work, right? But I think when you bring a guy like Brenton Cox to the Rams, he's not going to be your first guy off the board at edge. Hopefully not. I think he's somebody, again, the double dip that I keep talking about. Look, day 2 prospect could have potentially gone day 1 if he didn't have all these issues, right? But he does. He has the red flags. That will cause him to fall. However, the talent is evident. The work ethic, at least on the field, is evident. The explosiveness, evident. The fact he's good against the run, the fact he can rush with speed, he can rush with power, he's agile, it's all evident. He has a pass rush plan. He's got to get better technically. He's got to fine tune his game, but who doesn't in this draft? So here's the thing. I think that the risk is not going to outweigh the reward. I think the reward is definitely bigger than the risk. And I don't think there's a lot of risk. And I think when you go to a locker room like the Rams have, with all the coaches the Rams have, I think he'll be fine. And he'll have guys like Aaron Donald there who can kind of lift him up. And so for that reason, I think Brenton Cox Jr. makes a lot of sense on day 3 early on. If they trade in the 4th round or, the 5th round or whatever, I think he is going to be there because I think a lot of teams are just going to shy away from that red flag. They're not even going to want to deal with him. He could be a guy that goes undrafted. He's talented enough to go in at least the 2nd round, but he's a guy that could be undrafted. We don't know what the NFL is going to see in this guy as far as how big of a concern is it with the red flags. We've seen guys in the past who've gone undrafted, and we can't even tell you as to why, right? There have been guys that have just plummeted down the board, and to me, this seems like a guy that could do that. And I think the Rams would be smart to scoop him whenever he becomes available on day 3. So here's tier 3. We're going to go through these a little quicker than we did the others. We're focusing more on who's going to be there at the top of, where the Rams are picking those first 3 picks in the top 77. But these are guys I call tier 3 possible starters, guys that could start, but we're not calling them future starters. Guys that could, they have the potential, but I'm veering more towards could instead of will. So with that said, we start off Nick Hampton. He's a guy out of Appalachian State that when I watch him, he blows up on the tape. He's very fast. He's a very, speedy guy, explosive. He's measurables, but he's also a guy that has a motor. Now, the question with him is how raw is he? And I would say he's pretty raw. He's a good player, and he actually graded out higher than I expected as edge number 15 on my board. But I still have question marks about his pass rush plan. I still have question marks about his hand usage, right? I still have question marks about his ability to read and react in the run game. With that said, Nick Hampton is going to lead the pack in this tier 3, and I don't think it should surprise anybody because I think he's a very good player. As far as NFL player, it might take him some time, but he can work in a rotation early on in his career and possibly become a starter. KJ Henry out of Clemson, team captain, good size, big time athleticism, a high character guy. He has the upside to potentially start someday as an edge defender. I think he's more of an outside linebacker, but could also see him as a 4-3 defensive end. He does need to work on his strength, and he does get blown out of his positioning quite often. He's got a great pass rush plan. He's got great hand usage, and he's a good run defender. I think when you look at KJ Henry, is he the most agile? Is he the most explosive? Not at all. But he's somebody that has enough to his game where you could think, okay, at some point down the road, maybe this guy, he could possibly start. So those two, Nick Hampton, KJ Henry for the Rams, I see them in the middle of the draft. Henry could go, I think, probably as early as end of day 2 when we're talking about those compensatory picks. But I think with, you look at Hampton and Henry, I think they're probably going to go day 3. Next up, Tuli Tuipulotu from USC, a guy that a lot of USC fans like. I'm literally wearing a USC hoodie, so obviously I know who he is. I expected to be higher on him than I was. He's kind of all over the place. I could see him going day 2. A lot of people really like him. They're really high on him. I'm lower than the consensus, but I'm willing to admit that he has a rare blend of size, strength, and athleticism. When you look around, he moved around the defensive line, so he's played in all different alignments. Versatility is a big thing, I think, and 13.5 sacks in 2022 is a big thing as well. Solid pass rush plan, good hand usage. His motor does not shut off. This is one thing. This guy has a crazy motor. His tackling has to get better, though. That's a big thing when I watch the film. He's not bad in the run game as far as getting out in front of the ball carrier, stopping him, deconstructing blocks, things like that. It's a matter of when he stops the guy, when he is able to go to make the play, he has to finish the tackle, and he struggles to do that on tape. He needs to get better tackling. He's a good bull rusher, and he plays the run well, but he needs to tackle better. That's my biggest thing. So, in my opinion, Tuli's a guy who could go from day 2. He could be on day 3, any of the rounds. from 3 to 5, maybe even the end of the second. I could see a team falling in love with that versatility, even looking at him as a potential guy on the defensive line, not necessarily an edge or outside linebacker. So does he make sense for the Rams? Looking at the two I just mentioned, those guys I think do. Does Tuli? I think he does to a degree, but on day 3 is where I would probably look at him. Next up is the undersized Wisconsin edge defender, Nick Herbig. That's honestly kind of a tweener at this point, edge or linebacker. I was really quick to put him at edge, but I did have kind of the thought process of what if you put him as a off-ball linebacker and used him in blitzing situations. I actually did that with Yasir Abdullah. So if you're wondering why Yasir Abdullah does not reside on this list, it's because I have him he's going to be with the off-ball linebacker. So when I do that video, he will be on that video. So looking at Herbig, this is a guy that has crazy agility. He's got a very high motor. He's a good run defender. He tackles well. He reacts well. He's got good hand usage. He's not going to help you at all in a power game. So if you're trying to bull rush with him, if you want him to win with power, he's just not going to do it. He's a guy that's only going to win with his speed and his speed only. So when I look at Nick Herbig, he's not a guy I'm drafting to be a guy that fixes my pass rush. He's a guy that's going to be a part of fixing the pass rush. Whether he's a rotational guy to start, he's a possible starter down the line. I would like him to put on more weight and get stronger. When you get into that NFL training room, I would imagine he's probably going to get stronger, but this is not the guy that I would want if the Rams are only picking one edge defender. I would be very upset if this is the only guy they brought home out of the draft. I think they're going to go with 2, and so if they go with the second guy, this is a good option. I think you look at Herbig, end of day 2, early day 3 might be a trade-up scenario. I don't see him falling in the 5th, but if he does fall to the 5th, then that's great, and the Rams should consider that. Zach Harrison of Ohio State, good agility, good bull rush. You know, he can rush the passer from a speed perspective as well. Solid run defender. I think really when you get in the nitty gritty, he just doesn't use his hands at all. When you watch him, there's no counters. There's no hand usage whatsoever. I need to see him improve that part of his game. His ability to read and react is just about average. And when I look at his pass rush plan, it's all right, but definitely needs to improve. Once Zach Harrison gets into an NFL locker room, he gets into NFL coaching, I think he can really take, the next step in his career. But as of right now, I see him as a day 3 possible starter with some serious traits and upside. And with that size, I definitely think he's somebody that the Rams could consider. I'm probably lower on him than the consensus at this point, so he might go day 3, but I could also see him sliding in round 3 and right before round 4. I think he's going to go like round 4. And since the Rams don't have a pick round 4 unless they trade up, then they're probably going to be out of his wheelhouse. But I think he's a good player, and I think he's somebody that has enough upside where you consider him. Not a guy I'm considering over the guys I just previously mentioned, but he's certainly an interesting name. While everyone talks about Kalijah Kancey out of Pittsburgh, there's another guy who's been rushing the passer and doing a nice job of it out of Pittsburgh. It's Habakkuk Baldonado, who actually comes from Italy. He has a really cool story. He comes from Italy. He ends up living with a host family so he can play football and try to pursue his dream. And I'll tell you right now, this guy is not really athletic. He doesn't blow you away on tape, but he is a hard-working guy on the field. The guy's motor does not turn off. He's not the most athletic, but he has a nice jump step to him. When you look at him, he can tackle. He's got a pretty good pass rush plan for a guy that you could say is a little raw. He was asked to play a little bit more because of the injuries, and he never lost that spot. He was well liked at Pittsburgh. There are a lot of people that like this guy, and so I'm looking at him. He's got to improve, obviously, and there's some things that he just simply can't improve. He's not going to get super athletic over the next few years. He is what he is, but with good coaching, the technically sound ability of him, and just the fact that he has a true plan to go after the quarterback, I think he could end up being a possible starter someday with NFL coaching. I'm excited for this guy, and he's the guy to look out for. The Rams could probably snag him in the 6th or 7th, in my opinion. He's going to be a late day 3 guy, but he's got some upside out of Pitt. I think he's a guy to look out for. Andre Carter II out of Army is a huge name, as everybody knows. He goes to Army. He initially was going to have to serve 2 years without being able to go into the NFL. However, the U.S. government stepped in, and they're allowing him to go to the NFL and serve out his time in the Army after his career. Andre Carter II is somebody that doesn't have a lot of bull to him. He's not a really strong guy. Actually, he offers nothing in the bull rush department. And when you look at him, he needs to improve as a run defender 100%. He really struggled as a run defender. I'll say that right now. He's very small in a sense where he's tall, but he's just not. He's not very strong. He's not NFL strong. So he's going to get pushed around. He's going to have a hard time. You know, he's not going to be able to win with power. He's going to only be able to win with speed. And I think that's an issue when you look at Andre Carter II. So that's why I think he's going to fall farther than people initially expected. I think going into this draft, you know, before all of the testing and everything pre-draft, I think people felt like Andre Carter could go as high as the second round. Right now, for me, he's a possible starter. When he gets in that NFL weight room, we'll see probably a change in physique and whatnot. But let's be honest here. He struggles as a run defender. He's not built as a traditional edge. He's very small in a sense. He's tall, but he's kind of stick-figured in a sense. So he's going to need to really figure this thing out. It's not going to be an easy thing. There's some risk involved. For that said, I think he falls into day 3. And if the Rams want to go after him, I think he would work, but he can't be their only, address when it comes to going out and getting an edge defender. He can rush the passer, and that is what's going to get him drafted. Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame was somebody I just felt like I wanted more out of. He has an elite blend of athleticism and his overall size. I mean, if you want to find the guy that looks the perfect size for a 3-4 traditional outside linebacker, look no further than Isaiah Foskey. Like, he actually looks exactly how you want your edge defender to look. But the problem with him is that he's not a great run defender. I think he struggles, deconstructing blocks. I think he gets hung up way too much. I don't see his athleticism overly just completely overwhelm, offensive lines. I didn't see much as far as a pass rusher. I think there are times where he can explode and he gets sacks in bunches. But when you watch him, it's an inconsistency with the hand usage. His pass rush plan is all right. But I don't think he's a great speed rusher. He's more of a bull rusher. I didn't see a ton of bend out of him. So I think he is somewhat explosive. He does have a decent motor. He needs to improve as a tackler, run defender. He needs to get better at shedding blocks. I mean, it's going to be hard for him in the NFL if he can't do that. He's a guy that I'm way lower than the consensus on, but that doesn't mean I dislike him. And that doesn't mean he can't eventually become a starter. I have him as a possible starter in this tier 3 group, and a guy that if the Rams can get him, in the 5th round, I think it makes sense. He's probably going to go higher, and for that reason, I would not find him worth the pick in the 3rd round. So lastly here, we have tier 4 role players, not discrediting anybody. If you're in the role players, that doesn't mean that you can't be a starter. It doesn't mean that you are quote unquote trash, like some fans might call it. No, these guys can contribute. These guys can help you. These guys are probably going to be your, situational pass rushers or your sub package players that can make some noise if put in the right scenario. And the way the NFL works is that, yes, there's 11 starters, but if you think that only 11 guys are going to play on the defense, then you haven't been paying attention. So I look immediately, Eku Leota from Auburn is somebody that stands out to me on tape as a, he's going to be a role player. I think he has some upside. Maybe he could be a starter down the road. I really liked him. I like his ability to rush off the edge. A little bit more. He doesn't have the greatest bend, but I definitely liked him. I like watching him. YaYa Diaby is somebody that I wanted to like way more than I did. I think with the athleticism, the testing was great. I'm not as high on him as the consensus at all. I'm looking at Leota as a late day 3 guy. Diaby is probably going to go early day 3, if not late day 2, because of that testing. But I thought Yasir Abdullah did more on tape than Diaby did. So it's not that I dislike the guy, and I'm definitely, I'm fond of like what he brings to the table, but I just don't see a guy that's going to go early as everyone else is saying. And he will, but I don't personally see that on tape. And that's the great thing. We can all watch the same thing. You could put 1,000 people watching the same film and we all come up with something different. That's the beauty of film evaluation. Then you look at Dylan Horton, a guy that I thought was intriguing at TCU. Mike Morris. He's not your traditional edge, but he was used off the edge and he did a nice job. I think he's somebody that you definitely have to look at coming out of Michigan. I might be a little low on him. As far as I really like the player, but he ended up falling in that tier 4. Villiami Fehoko out of San Jose State is another one to keep an eye on. I think all of these guys are going to be late day 3, except for Diaby. I just wasn't as high on him as the consensus. Isaiah Land is another intriguing option. Really good athleticism out of Florida A&M. And then Thomas Incoom from Central Michigan is another guy I'm looking at where, you could probably find late in the draft. All these guys can be legitimate role players in the NFL. That's not a bad thing. They could all end up being starters. I could be absolutely wrong. But this is where I saw the edge defenders. At the end of the day, if you're asking me who stands out to me, who do I want to see wearing horns, I think the Rams 100% should be drafting edge in the 2nd round, 36th overall. And I think they 100% should be looking at doubling up. And, I mentioned double dip repeatedly in this episode, and I'll just say it again, okay? They, right now on the roster, do not have Leonard Floyd anymore. It's Mike Hoyt. It's Keir Thomas, right? It's Daniel Hardy. They don't have a ton of edge help. So they need some guys. And I think this offseason, they have not signed anybody, and I don't really expect them to, right? Their defensive line, again, I've seen a lot of people say they should go after a certain defensive lineman from Pitt. I just have to push back on that. They have way too many needs to draft a defensive lineman when they already really have a solid defensive line. I'll do a separate video on that if you don't believe me, but looking at the edge, I think Will McDonald IV has to be the pick at 36 if he's there. Like, he has to be the pick. He is perfect. He'd be best player available, and he's going to fill the void that you have now without Leonard Floyd, okay? He's going to be able to rush the passer. He's going to be able to, stop the run. He's going to help you with his length and his bend. He is going to be a problem. And now you put him with NFL coaching, and he's going to be a real problem. He was used in stunts. He could be, used all over the defensive line. He has the versatility. I think, that's the guy. If you're looking at anybody, if you take anything away from this video, just take away Will McDonald IV is that guy. Okay. If you're asking me who I want, Will McDonald IV makes the most sense at 36. If they draft a guy at 69, okay, if they draft a guy at 69, then I think the best option there, if I'm being real, is probably Byron Young, if I'm being real. I think Byron Young, that kind of seems to be where he's going to fall. 69 or 77 overall, I think it's Byron Young. If you're talking the 5th round, then I think a guy like Lonnie Phelps, who I think is going to fall, who shouldn't fall, but I think he's going to fall. Lonnie Phelps makes sense. Brenton Cox makes sense. I personally, my go-to right now, I think the duo that I would love is if the Rams could somehow get a guy like Will McDonald IV at 36 and then find a way to get Isaiah McGuire on day 3, trading up into the 4th. Maybe you trade down, you still end up with, whoever you want at 69. You trade down from 77, you get an extra 4th rounder. I don't know how that works, but I would like to see Isaiah McGuire and Will McDonald. I think that would be the best duo the Rams could get. Obviously, the best duo the Rams, the best duo possible, because in my mind, that's possible. If you're looking for the best duo, I guess if, the Rams draft Will McDonald IV and he's there at 36, and then somehow Felix Anudike-Uzomah falls to 69, then that would be by far the best combination of edge defenders. And, I would think all of a sudden the NFC West is in some trouble. You have those guys, then you have Aaron Donald, you're in good shape. But let's be real here. That's probably not going to happen. So I like Will McDonald IV, and I like, Byron Young, probably the most realistic in the third round, or Isaiah McGuire if you get him early. I think I might even draft Isaiah McGuire at 77. Might be a little bit of a reach, but might be worth it. In the fifth round, again, Brenton Cox, Lonnie Phelps, I think those guys make the most sense. After that, I think you're looking at guys like Habakkuk Baldonado. You're looking at guys like Dylan Horton, Mike Morris, Isaiah Land. So should be interesting. I think the Rams are going to double dip in the first 4 picks that they make in this draft. We'll see what ends up happening, but I'm hoping that they go with Will McDonald IV. If they don't go with him and he's off the board, then Felix Anudike-Uzomah makes a lot of sense to me. Nolan Smith doesn't seem like a realistic option. I just included him because, I don't know, I just included him. I mean, maybe I probably shouldn't have gotten your hopes up. Keion White, I included. I still think he'll go in the first as well. And Will McDonald, to me, is a first-round talent, so I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, he's not there in the second round. But after that, I think BJ Ojulari is an option. Like I said, if those other guys are there, probably not. But if BJ Ojulari is the best player available, I'm all for it, right? I just think there are better guys that I just mentioned earlier that can help you right away, that can help you in the run game. And I think that's a big thing right now. You got to worry about the run defensive department. So, in conclusion, that's what I have. Let me know what you guys had in the comment section below, or what you guys think I should have had, or anybody I'm missing. Tell me a prospect I forgot about. Anything. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I'm out of here. You guys take care. Later, folks.